So I will get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our School Health Services mid-year training. This is the portion of the mid-year training that will cover updates from the Colorado Department of Education and the Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing. After we present, you will then hear from PCG. And a few housekeeping reminders. Please keep yourself muted. If you are comfortable having your video on, great. If not, we completely understand that too. Put questions in the chat or raise your hand. We do encourage questions throughout the presentation. The raise your hand feature is in the taskbar at the bottom of your screen in reactions. You should see it at the bottom there. So that's where you'll find that raise your hand feature, and we'll be sure and call on you if you do have a question. These presentations are being recorded. The presentations as well as the recorded webinar will be posted to the website for your review. And there are 2 more opportunities to take part in this webinar if anyone else on your team would like to attend. And today from PCG, we have with us Andrew Jelinski, Jennifer Miller, John Ward, Rose Jensen, and Lori Bob. Hopefully I got everyone there. From CDE, we have Omar Estrada. And from the department, we have myself, Olga Ginchin, and Tracy Gonzalez. A quick rundown of the CDE and department portion of the presentation. I will just go over that new requirement for the OPR and PI number, go over contract renewals, stakeholder updates, and just a super quick review of the program website. Then I'll hand it over to Omar, who will talk about the LSP revision process, parental consent for comprehensive reviews, and an upcoming name change for the CDE annual report. Here's just a list of acronyms. If there's something that you just don't know what it stands for, you're welcome to go back and refer to this list and find out what it stands for. And department updates. First, just that national provider identifier requirement. That NPI number is required in the ordering provider field for physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech, language, and hearing services with a date of service of January 1st, 2022 or later. So obviously that's something that should have already taken place. Right now, your district or BOCES NPI may be used. And to be clear that it is that ordering provider field, that's the newly required field. Back at the annual training, it was incorrectly stated that it was the referring provider field. So just want to be sure that everyone's clear. It is the ordering provider field. You do have a grace period until March 1st before claims will be denied without that number. And if you have any questions, please refer to your billing agent if you work with one. And you can also check out the School Health Services billing manual, and it has detailed requirements there. That billing manual link is listed at the bottom of your screen. District and department contracts. All districts and BOCES that participate in the School Health Services program will receive a contract from the department this spring, and it does include all of the terms and conditions of program participation. It is a required part to receive those federal matching funds for the School Health Services program, and it is a very detailed document that outlines all of those program requirements. So laws that are applicable to the program, data privacy requirements, terms of reimbursement, program review terms. So if you have a comprehensive review, it outlines those requirements there, and many other program requirements. These are required at least every 5 years, and the one that you'll receive this spring will be effective July 1st, 2022 through June 30th of 2023. And the following 4 fiscal years, you'll receive option letters for those years. After mid-year training is complete, please look for an email from me, and that will be to confirm the authorized signatory that we have on file for your district. Obviously, there has been a ton of personnel changes over the last few years, so we do want to make sure that we are sending that DocuSign contract to the correct person via email. And that's normally someone like a CFO or a superintendent who's authorized to sign on behalf of your district. So please do look for that email and just reply with who should be signing that contract so we can get it sent to the correct person. The School Health Services Stakeholder Program. First, just what is the Stakeholder Program? It is a group of participants from across the state that help the department with idea exchange. They participate in program training and act as mentors. Most recently, they have been participating in our new coordinator mentorship meetings that take place on a monthly basis. And we have received some really good feedback about their participation. So we do really appreciate those stakeholders being a part of those monthly mentorship meetings. So thank you for that. And they help us with information dissemination. And because they have been with the program for some time, they do have a good amount of program knowledge. On the stakeholder website, you can find who your stakeholder is. If you're not sure who they are, and you can find their contact information as well. You could also see meeting dates on there, past and future meeting dates. And we also just added on the stakeholder website what's called a stakeholder areas of knowledge grid. So this is just a document that shows all of those different program areas and where our stakeholders have identified a strong area of knowledge in those key program areas. So I think this is a great resource for perhaps if you're a new coordinator and you just have a lot to learn about the program. You can see where our stakeholders do have a strong area of knowledge. And also if you're maybe a more seasoned coordinator, but you are, something is changing in your district. Perhaps you're changing the way that you claim for transportation. You can reach out to these stakeholders and see how they do that in their district, how they implement those program requirements. So I circled the names at the top so that you can just click on that stakeholder name and that will generate an email so you can just contact them via email. Again, you can go to the stakeholder website to find who your stakeholder is. They are organized by regions and all their names are listed. And just a very quick plug for our program website. It is a great resource to see how all of those different parts of the program work together. And we do try to keep it as updated as we can with the most current information. So please check it out, and I would recommend bookmarking it as well. It has training dates and past presentations on there, flyers and trend sheets. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, please do so. That contains some great information as well. The annual reports listed on there are sort of a good general overview of the program. I think it really does a good job of explaining how the program works. And of course, that very detailed program manual. It should be the main source of information for the program and so much more. So if you see at the bottom of the screen there, again, there is that link to our program website. What questions do you have for me before I send it over to Omar? Questions, anyone? Okay, I will toss it over to Omar.
Thank you, Olga. Hello, everyone. I am very excited to be able to provide these updates for you today. We'll be covering items, as Olga mentioned, related to the CDE comprehensive review, the LSP revision process, as well as a big change or a name change to the CDE annual reports. As always, I'm going to end my portion of today's session by covering some FAQs populated by questions I have received over the previous few months. Next slide, please. So we're going to start off first by covering a change to the local services plan revision process. Moving forward, a complete LSP submission must include the revised LSP, which of course was always the case in the past. However, now it must also include an LSP revision companion form. This addition to the LSP revision process is going to allow us to provide a better document history for LSPs as revisions come in as needed by districts or BOCES. Now, many of you have completed a revision in the past. Many of you are new and have never really completed a revision. And there are some of you who would like to maybe complete a revision in the near future. So for those of you that have completed a revision, I've been told that it is a quick and easy process. And this new companion form is going to, try to continue that spirit of keeping things simple. So we made sure to design it so that it aligns with the LSP itself so that you can kind of follow one-to-one. Districts and BOCES need only to complete the sections that are relevant to the revision that they are submitting, and they must submit it with their revised LSP. The full process is summarized on the graphic that you see on the screen. And as you can see, the process doesn't really change. You're simply attaching this form to your initial email to me that starts the revision request. As always, there is no deadline for these revisions outside, of course, the end date of the current LSP period in which your district or BOCES participates. Next slide. As I mentioned, the intent is to keep it simple. So the LSP revision form follows a similar structure to the LSP. The 4 sections outlined on the form itself are present on the screen. You'll notice that they're going to be practically identical to the LSP. So it's going to have a cover page, a community section where you might also cover changes in the underinsured children section. It's also going to have a program plan as well as a section to cover goals and objectives. Like all of the other school health services documents that we provide at CDE, they're going to be available on our website under the local services plan box, and it's going to be titled the LSP revision companion form. So if you would like to see an example of what it looks like, you can always check out our CDE school health services website. Next slide, please. And before we move on from this topic, I want to cover some considerations when revising your LSP. The first one is, are you revising or are your revisions still in line with the needs of the community? So remember that the LSP is a document that in its creation process receives community input as part of the process to create it. The district and BOCES wishing to make a change to the LSP should check to see if the changes they want to make are still in line with the needs of the community or the input provided. And if this is not the case, then it would be advisable for the district or BOCES to gather more community input and include this information in the LSP revision companion form. We have a section for community input on there. The second consideration is there anyone missing from the conversation? So as with the first consideration, you can always refer to the community participation portion of the LSP, which can be beneficial in providing insight for this consideration. The third item covers whether the revision is even necessary. So if current goals, objectives, and health service categories covers the purchase, it may not be. The revision may not be needed. Districts on older templates using percentage allocation in their health service categories, as an example, do not need to request a revision to reallocate funds to another category. However, if the same district would like to update their LSP to a newer template, which is available on our website, then this would require a revision since we are updating documents in this case. Filling the companion form in this example would be very straightforward since it is really just a document format update. So it should be quick and easy. And the fourth and final consideration, if you're planning to make a revision, make sure to take a look at the rest of your LSP and ask yourself, is there anything else that may no longer be relevant or you may want to revise? If you're revising your health service categories, you may also look at your goals and objectives and see if those as a result of your new health service categories selection? Do they change, or do you have to adjust them? And of course, if you have any questions during this process, you can always reach out to me via email or give me a call. Next slide, please. If your district is under comprehensive review, this is a reminder that you will also receive a couple of emails from us at CDE in order to review parental consents for the sample of students received. Both emails will come to districts on or around January 1st, really depending on when the first business day of the month is. The first email is going to come directly from myself to districts that are under comprehensive review. This first email is going to provide some instructions on the process overall, as well as provide instructions on how to sign up for CDE's Secure Transfer Program. This will only apply if it's the first time a coordinator is accessing the system. For those of you that have done it in the past, you'll simply use the username and password that you have used to sign on the first time. That same email is going to let districts know that they're going to receive another email. So the second email from the email that you see on that screen, the Notify at Transfer email, which will direct them to the online secure transfer system. This is the only way that parental consents should be sent to me, as it is secure to send them this way. Please do not send parental consent forms to me via email. You should only be using this online secure system. And as for the period to submit these parental consents, it's going to be from January 1st until February 28th. And many of you are very familiar with that February 28 number, because that is also the due dates for the annual report to CDE, which is how I'm transitioning to the next slide, please. As Olga mentioned, we're going to be looking at a name change because we've heard from many of you that the name of this report can be confusing, because it sounds very close to the annual cost report that many of you complete on the other side of this program. So in recognition of this, we made a change to the name from annual report to CDE to the reimbursement spending report to CDE. You may also see it with the fiscal year on the front, so 2020 something to 20 something reimbursement spending report. We believe this will go far in reducing much of that confusion associated with the previous name, and we will begin to make changes immediately on the items we sent out to all of you. So if you have yet to complete the annual report to CDE, which again is due February 28th, be prepared to see the new name change as soon as you log into the form site website. And we will begin to make changes on the report after the end of these mid-year training sessions. So hopefully by the Monday after next week's training sessions, we'll make sure to get those updated. And I did want to make sure everyone knew, or remind everyone, that we are only changing the name. The actual link to the form will remain the same. So you shouldn't have any issues accessing the form. You'll just see the new name change on that form. Next slide, please. Our final update for you all before getting to some FAQs is on the newly named reimbursement spending report to CDE. As I have mentioned before, the reimbursement spending report to CDE is going to be due Monday, February 28th, 2022. So please make sure to start on that as soon as possible. For districts that have not completed it yet, you will be receiving more reminders as we get closer to the due dates. Some of you that have already completed the reimbursement spending report have mentioned to me that one of the more time-consuming areas of completing the report was transitioning health service categories from the previous 24 list of categories to the current list of 5 subcategories. So keep in mind that district and BOCES can always update their LSP to match the updated list of health service categories, just to make this report easier to complete in the future. The information that district and BOCES provided in the report will be summarized and placed on district/BOCES flyers, which are going to be sent to you all by August, usually around the time of annual training. So keep an eye out for those. We are also going to make sure to send state level flyers, make sure those are available to you all. And you can use these flyers as you see fit internally, just to make sure everyone knows the good work that you all are doing. Next slide, please. Okay, now it's time for some FAQs. So the first one is, am I allowed to spend funds on students with IEPs? Or excuse me, am I only allowed to spend funds with students on IEPs? And the answer to that is no, you can spend funds on health needs for any and all students, as long as, of course, the two factors that I always mention for expenditure allowability are satisfied, which is health need is present, and if it is aligned with the LSP. The next FAQ is, how is the process to revise the LSP different from creating the process? So keep in mind, when you create an LSP, it's going to be active for a 5-year period. And within that 5-year period, you can revise the LSP as a need arises. If you do a revision still within the 5-year period, it does not reset it. As I mentioned in the past, if you're doing a revision and it strays too far from what the community, what the input that the community has provided during the creation of the LSP, you may be asked to reach out to the community members to gather input on that revision if it's needed. This is different from when you're creating the LSP, where you will always have to get community input from either local health agencies, teachers, parents, students, so on. So as an example, if your district is going to, is within the 2020 to 2025 cohort, so your LSP started July 1st, 2020, and is going to end June 30th, 2025. A revision done on April of 2023 will not change when your LSP is going to end. In this example, it is still going to end on June 30th of 2025, and we will still require a new LSP to be submitted on August 31st of 2025. Next slide, please. Our final FAQ. Our organization would like to update our LSP to use the updated health service categories. Do we need to submit a companion document with our revised LSP? In this case, yes, you would still need to submit a companion form. If you are revising your LSP, even if it is to update it to a new template without any changes elsewhere, you would still need to submit a companion form, just to make sure that we keep that good document history intact for your district or BOCES LSP. So this concludes the CDE portion of the presentation. Now, before passing it on, I'm going to pause for any questions for either myself or for Olga. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself, or type it in the chat.
I just have a quick question.
Yep.
For everybody. So our LSP expires in 2023 next year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was done before I even started in this position. When would be a good time for me to start that or start reviewing that?
Yep.
Any hints?
So I think it's different for many districts. I think they all have a different start date. We usually say, to provide yourself enough time, best practice being 10 months. Obviously, that time is much shorter for you, but we can get started as soon as we can. This is something that I can meet with you individually just to get you started. But every district is going to be different, just depending on experience level, depending on how big the district is. Is there any coordinator in the chat that might want to provide their 5 cents?
Hey, Gary, it's Nancy. When I did mine, it's either last year or 2 years ago, I can't remember exactly when. I usually start in the fall getting the committee together, and then I set my meetings. I mean, as everybody knows, I'd rather get it done sooner than later. So my goal is always to have it completely done by the end of January, and then I submit it to Omar in February once everything is done. I typically have, we had meetings in October, November, and December, I'm pretty sure. And then I give myself the month of January to write it, and then I bring the committee back together for them to review what everything was decided. And then once I get their approval, it goes to our person in charge of the program here in the district for them to review it as well. and then it's signed and I send it off. So I don't like to take it down to the deadline. So even though the fall is such a horrible time of year for us, I know a lot of districts will start it like maybe in January, since we do have the extension of time to submit it. And I may think about doing that the next time I have mine, just move it back a little bit because there isn't a rush to get it in. And that way you can get through all the fall stuff that we have to do and then maybe start it up in January. That might make more sense, but that's how I did it. It was 2 years ago, 2 years ago.
Thank you, Nancy.
Hi, Gary. This is Michelle Camille from Pueblo. I start collecting the community health assessments in the summertime. And then at the beginning of the school year, I start working on the surveys and then work with the district IT department to send those surveys out to district staff and community members and families. And then give myself time to collect that data so that I can create my presentation. And then I start working in the fall, creating my team. And in January is when I have that first meeting. And then we have a second meeting, I believe in about the end of February, where we come back together. If there was any changes, I'll have that prepared for them. And if everybody agrees, then I work on preparing the final LSP and have that sent to Omar, I want to say right before, in June. So that's what I do.
Great, thank you.
Thanks,
We
Michelle.
also followed very similar tactics here in Durango, and ours was due last summer, I believe. So I wanted to have a advisory committee established before everybody left for the summer, mostly, because around here, people, it's hard to connect. So we had our advisory committee last March. We had 2 meetings and we had another one in April. And then we figured out our priorities. And then I went ahead, wrote up the local service plan and sent to them a preview for them to approve before I did send it to Omar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hattie. And I'll make sure to reach out to you after this, Gary, so we can start strategizing for this. Is there any other questions on my items or anything Olga mentioned? Okay. So I'm not seeing any other questions, in which case I'm going to pass it off to Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Good morning, everyone. Let me just get this set up right here. And then am I showing the correct screen or is this the incorrect one? Is it showing the?
It's the wrong
slides?
one.
I see your presenter view.
thanks.
Yep.
There we go. All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew. You probably know me from all the emails that you get from CORMTS. Today, we're going to be going over a little bit about RMTS and some comprehensive reviews. Specifically, we're going to be talking about locations and shifts. A lot of questions about those, so we'll go over that. Justifying moments. I get a lot of questions about moments as well, so we'll go over that as well. Then I'll pass it on to John, who will be talking about comprehensive reviews and the common findings that we had this quarter. Then he's going to take us through a short quiz to test your knowledge of what you've learned today, and then we'll end with the program context. And then for reference, you do have the acronym as usual. And then we're going to jump right in. So we're going to be talking about locations and shifts. So the first thing we're going to go over is locations. You probably heard me say before, maybe me asking what was the location of a provider if you ever need your staff pool list unlocked. To explain what locations are, it would be a way for you to organize your providers into either schools or categories to make it easier for you to navigate and organize. This is an optional thing to do. It does not affect compliance at all. If somebody's in the wrong location, it does not affect any form of like your compliance rate. So just understand that because I do get a lot of people panicking, thinking that somebody's in the wrong place, they did something wrong, you know, they're in trouble with the program. And so locations can be used in different ways though. You can have multiple school locations. So you would have maybe 15 locations, 15 schools inside your district. You can also group your providers by whether they're in elementary, middle, or high school, depending on, because this would be useful if you're comparing it to your shifts, because a lot of the providers have the same shifts if they're in elementary versus middle school versus high school. You can also not use locations if you have a single district-wide location, because you just don't really need to keep your people organized. You just want them to have them all in one place and not have to worry about keeping track. That's totally fine as well. That is a viable option. All right, the only time that you can make updates to a provider's location would be in the upcoming quarter. So when, for example, AJ 22 is going to be open in February for edits. That's when you can swap people and change the locations. Now, just to be careful though, once you do change somebody's location and you certify your staff pool list, that location will become locked for that provider. So if you do try to vacate them, you'll get an error. You'll have to let PCG know, because what we'll have to do is swap their location back to the original location, and then you can make the vacancy, vacancy, and then you can delete the vacancy in the upcoming quarter. I know it's a pain in the butt. That's because the locations don't always, they lock it in. So that's something to consider when if you were to go with the district-wide option, that you wouldn't have to worry about this anymore. And yeah, again, that will be something that you would reach out to PCG for if you do get that error. Is there any question about locations before I continue? Very simple. Okay, now we're going to talk about shifts. Shifts get a little, they're kind of confusing sometimes. So we'll go over some of the things that you need in your shifts. So when you're about to certify your staff pool list, you should run through a QC of your shifts to make sure that people are working at the correct times. You want to make sure that there's no 0-hour shifts or shifts that are greater than 40 hours per week. We do know that there are some maybe admin positions that do work longer hours or nurses that work extended hours. This is something that you might receive an email from PCG. And we're asking you to confirm that these shifts are indeed greater than 40 hours a week. We also want to confirm that your end times are within a reasonable range. The range that PCG will check for is between 7 and 4:30. If you're outside that range, you might get an email from us confirming it. If we've confirmed within this school year, we won't send you an email about that shift. Only new shifts that we found that we didn't have in the previous quarters. You want to make sure that everybody has an active shift. Now, it's impossible to pull this in the system, but it's always something good to check, because if they have an inactive shift, they won't be getting their moments at the correct time. And then you want to make sure that you do have at least one full-time shift. This is a 6.5 hours per day or more. If you don't, again, we will be reaching out to confirm this. You shouldn't have just people that work 2 hours a day on your staff pool list. Most districts will definitely have somebody that works a longer hours, especially if they're admin or one of the direct service roles. And then you just want to make sure that the shifts match up. If you do name your shifts nurse, and then you have like a certain time to a certain time, but then this provider is not a nurse at all, they're a principal, that could bring some bills for you that you might have the wrong shift for this person. We're going to go over how to review your shifts. And I'll even show a demonstration that's kind of useful in cleaning up your shift lists for when you're adding new providers. So the first step we're doing is exporting your staff pool positions. This should be a normal step in your QC process where you're taking a look at your staff pool. This is right before you're about to certify. You feel pretty confident, but now you need to check your shifts and you want to clean them up before you certify. You're going to download your shift report. I mean, not your shift report, apologize. Your staff pool positions report. You're going to go to the top of the page and you're going to put a filter on the Excel, which will create a drop down for all the shifts in the shift type name column. And again, I'll demonstrate this for you. These are all the shifts that anything that's in your drop down for the Excel are shifts that are active, that are being used by a provider on your list. These shifts can't be inactivated unless those people are either removed from your staff pool, you either change the shift to a different shift, or you can just leave it because the shift is active. You're going to compare this to your shifts in your configurations. You're going to go to the claimant system and you'll have a list of all your shifts right there. And you can just compare the lists. Anything that's not that is in the claimant system that's not in your Excel can be inactivated. Okay, I'm going to do a demonstration for you. Just going to share a different screen. Can everybody see my screen? It's the claimant system right now.
Yep, you're good.
Thanks, Sean. All right. So I'm in the claimant system right now. What you're going to do is you're going to click the quarter. You want to go to the upcoming quarter, the quarter that you're reviewing your shifts for. So I went to AJ 22. I go to staff pool positions. And then it's going to be a simple export. When you hit export, it'll download the Excel for you. That way you can review it to make sure this is your whole staff pool for the quarter. Obviously, I'm not going to keep these vacancies because I can't. But this is what my export looks like. You're going to click one on the side. We're going to go to sort and filter. And we're going to hit filter. You're going to go to column I, which is your shift type name. Click the down arrow. And voila. These are all the shifts that are not active, but are in use. I must clarify that active shifts don't have to be in use. Inactive shifts cannot be in use. But all these shifts are in use. You're going to be comparing this list to what I'm going to be pulling up right now. So you go back to your claimant system. You could do this on 2 screens if you like to. Configurations, shifts. Again, make sure you're in the correct quarter. Otherwise, you won't be able to change any shifts. Now, when I compare these lists, one of them I found that wasn't on my Excel was this one at the top, the Monday, Wednesday, 7:45 to 3:45. So I want to inactivate that. I want to make it so that way it's not available for me when I'm adding a new provider on the list in the future, because I'm not using the shift. I simply click it. I'm going to hit inactivate. We save changes. It won't immediately turn red. Right now it's turning blue, saying that this was edited in this session. These are your inactive shifts. It's going to appear down here once you refresh. So I'm going to refresh right now. And there it is. It's an inactive shift. I can't assign the shift to anybody in my staff pool. So if I was to add a new provider, it wouldn't be part of my drop down anymore. It just makes it nice and cleaner because I have less shifts to choose from. If I wanted to reactivate it, you just do simply the opposite. uncheck the inactive, save changes. You can only do this in the upcoming quarter. You cannot do this in the current quarter. Another way that you could review this, if you need to, I mean, some districts don't have that many shifts, and you don't actually have to do the export if you just do a click and test. So you're just going to click one of the shifts, try and activating it, save changes. Oops, looks like I got an error. This means that one of my providers has this shift. In order for me to inactivate it again, I need to either change the provider's shift, delete the provider, if that's the only person that has the shift, or I can just leave it active. The shift is being used. I don't want to inactivate it. And then you can just simply go down the list and try doing that to all your shifts. I can't do that one either. That's active. Let's try this one. That one is not being used. So it turned blue, and then when I refresh again, I'll go back down to my inactives. So those are the two options on how to clean up your shift list. Something to keep in mind for your shifts, your provider's shift should be covered 100% within the shift. Now, if the shift goes a little bit over their time, let's say the provider maybe gets off 15 minutes early than everybody else, they can still use that shift, especially if you're doing a direct replacement and you want to capture costs. And the only person that you can exchange that with is somebody that has a slightly different shift. Again, 100% of the actual shift was covered by the system shift. So that's fine. Okay, I am gonna go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. Am I displaying the correct screen right now?
Yep, you're good.
Thanks, John. All right. I need the controls for it though. All right. Now we're going to talk about justifying moments. So in OD21, we created the feature, the no work feature, that we've heard very positive reviews on. This allows coordinators to justify the moments themselves. It eliminates PCG from the mix. You do not have to email us about justifying a moment. This is something that you can do yourself in the system. To simply do this, you go to your moments page on the claimant system, go to the provider's name, and click the action gear to the right. You click the no work option, which allows you to use a paid or unpaid leave for this provider. They're saying that this person is not going to be coming back in time to answer the moment, and they are out on a leave. You can only do this while the moment is active. So you can't do it for upcoming moments, and you cannot use it for expired moments. So make sure you do answer it within the 2-day window, just like your providers. You also do have the option. A lot of times people will delete things because they think it's spam, to re-notify them. So if you click the notify, you will resend the moment to them, the last notification that they got, back to the provider, so that way they can answer the moment. A lot of the questions I get is, when do I use the justification option? When do I use a vacancy? And when do I just let the participant answer the moment? So we've created a moment justification decision tree. And this could be something handy that if you want to print out, use, however you want to use it, it's pretty handy. So if we start at the left, we got to ask yourself, will the participant return within the 2-day response window? If they are going to be returning before the 2 days is over, they can answer the moment, and they can answer the moment as I was not working, and they can answer whether it was, was it a sick leave that was paid or was it unpaid time off. If they're not going to be returning before the 2 days are up, and this would be something again that you would find from your HR. You're going to work with your HR to figure out whether or not you're going to be using this justification or not. Because sometimes people just disappear and they like they resign, but they don't tell anybody. So that could be an option. We want to know if the participant is going to be returning to work next quarter. So if they're not coming back next quarter, if they're taking an extended leave, maybe it's a maternity leave, sabbatical, they just quit, and they're not going to be returning next quarter, you want to vacate this position. This person's not going to be coming back to it. So if the person is coming back next quarter, this is when you would be using your no work option. You know that they're not going to be able to answer the moment themselves, so you'll have to answer on their behest. Are there any questions about moment justifications before I turn it over to John? All right. Well, if there is no more questions, John, I'm going to turn it over to you for the comprehensive review.
Okay. And could you just stop sharing really quick? Or
Yeah, of
actually, we can just go with yours. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will be going over just the comprehensive review findings from this most recent round of comprehensive reviews. So those are pretty much about to be completed in the next few days or so. We did get the question yesterday of when districts who were selected this year will receive their summary report or final findings. And the answer to that is just probably in mid-February. I would say like 2 to 3 weeks from now, you should receive that finalized report via email. But let's go ahead and dive right in. So first and foremost, probably one of the most common findings we had this year was just licensure retention as a whole. So instances of a provider's job category in the system not matching their licensure. So let's say a person was an SLPA, but in the claiming system, they're listed as an SLP. Things like that, not matching their documentation or their licensure. So again, in those instances, those costs would have to be removed for that provider because they don't have the backup license for what they're reported as. Next up is just license duration. You should always make sure you have licensure on hand that covers the entire span that provider was on the staff pool list. So it's fine if it lapses during the year, but if you are selected for a comprehensive review, and even if you're not, you should still have that renewed license on hand just in case you are asked for it, because with this program, you should have backup documentation and licensure specifically to cover that entire span on the staff pool list. And we'll go into an example down below in a little bit. And just with that, licenses are only good for the effective time period listed. So again, everything is based off the staff pool list really. So that time they're on the staff pool list that, let's say, is showing up on the annual cost report, their licensure and backup documentation should match that time period. Okay, so we are just going to go through a quick scenario. So with this, if you all could just, while I'm talking, just refine that chat, that Zoom chat, because we will be asking you to just kind of provide your response, so what you would put as the answer in the chat. So we have John, who is a occupational therapist, has a DORA licensure, and that was issued on April 1st of 2020. But expired on March 31st, 2021. John was on the staff list from October 1st, 2020 through 6/30/2021. So the question here, will a copy of this license be compliant evidence in a review? Why or why not? So with this, again, if you all could just find that Zoom chat, just provide a brief answer, doesn't have to be lengthy. But kind of one part of this situation should definitely be sticking out to y'all. Okay, so we have Ms. Michelle and Nancy. Thank you all for providing that. Getting a lot of no's, okay. Give it another like 15, 20 seconds. But so far we have, I think, no, no, no. All right, yeah, so the answer would be no. And if Andrew, if you could just click one time. There, we got a little fancy with this one. There we go. Yeah, so the answer is no, because the licensure does not cover the dates 4/1 through 6/30. So again, that entire time period on the staff list should be covered based on the license. So in this case, if this was a comprehensive review, the district would have to remove those costs, those payroll costs of from 4/1 to 6/30. So that entire quarter would have to be zeroed out. Both on the, I should add, both on the annual and quarterly cost report. Okay, thank you. All right, so getting into more of the, I guess you could say, finance piece a little bit, both for the annual and quarterly cost reports. So one thing we have seen more this year, again, just because of the COVID situation, but always ensure you are including bonuses, stipends, extra duty pay on your cost reports, as long as they relate to that person's primary job function. So extra duty pay for performing like crossing guard duties, that wouldn't be allowable. But if they're supervising more staff, if going back to my earlier example, if it's an SLP supervising an SLPA and they receive a little bit of bonus pay for that, that's allowable. One item that we saw pretty much across the board with all districts selected this year was a COVID bonus. So again, those more general bonuses or stipends can be reported on your cost report. So if your district is providing those type of bonuses or stipends, definitely ensure to include those on the cost report. And any upcoming cost reports, if you have a specific situation you want to talk through, definitely don't hesitate to call PCG and we can walk you through kind of our thinking and get that extra detail. Next up, which probably was more prevalent, can you go back one? Sorry. One that was probably more prevalent this year than past years. Can you advance one, Andrew? Yeah. So all financial documentation, so whether it's payroll, other costs, materials and supplies, transportation, when you do provide us documentation, it must include funder account codes. We do a cursory review when we initially receive your documentation, and that is the first thing that we look for, just because it's easy to spot whether it's there or not. And if it's not, we're gonna just ask that you provide updated documentation. So always ensure it includes funder account codes. It helps us determine if costs are allowable, identify federal funds if anything was missing, things like that. So please always include funder account codes. And if any sort of documentation isn't able to be provided, then those costs will have to be removed. So I would definitely recommend, even if you are experienced, sometimes it's good to have a little reminder. So definitely take advantage of those entrance calls. We'll go through really everything that we are requesting, what we're looking for, what details need to be on those pieces of documentation. So it's good. It's once every 3 years, so it might be good just to have that reminder, that walkthrough. Typically, they take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, so it doesn't take a huge chunk of time to kind of just walk through everything and get that refresher. But just going to check if we have any questions, and don't see any. So I think we can go ahead and advance to our little activity here.
John, I just have a real quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
You said bonuses and stipends can be included. But that's as long as they're not funded by federal money, correct?
Correct. Yeah. With anything with this program, the federal 100% federally funded kind of item still applies to everything. If it's not 100% federally funded, you can still report the portion that wasn't. So that, and probably as long as it relates to their primary job function or it's just a more general stipend or bonus, are probably the two things I would definitely keep in mind.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. All right, so you should see Tracy will shortly here put up a poll with 5 different questions. So we'll give you all a few minutes to go ahead and answer those poll questions, and then we'll go over the answers together. But just like Andrew said earlier, it's just more of a knowledge check of everything that we talked about today, and all of that, as well as kind of questions we get often on the help desk.
If you are unable to see the poll, you can maximize up in the right-hand corner. I know there's 5 questions on there, so you can maximize that to pop it up so that you're able to read all of those questions. We'll give it a few minutes since there are so many questions on there, and wait for everyone to start answering the poll. There we go. We're starting to trickle in a little bit. We're looking for at least 10 to 15 of you to answer the question. So we are at about 7 of you right now. Let's see if we can get a few more in there.
And it is anonymous, so we won't know whose answers are what.
All right, I'm going to give it about 30 more seconds and then we'll go ahead and end the poll and share results.
All right, so let's go ahead and review these. And if you have any follow-up questions at all about the answers or even a specific situation, feel free to can come off mute or just use that chat, and we can go over those as well. But question number 1, looks like the majority of folks got correct. But the question is, participants are monitored by PCG and considered out of compliance if they are not assigned to their correct district location. So this, the answer is false. So the location feature isn't mandatory. PCG and the department don't monitor that or consider that a part of being compliant with the program. It is a district specific decision of whether they would like to use that functionality. We would just recommend that you don't kind of overload it with 50, 60 different locations, just because that can be a little bit difficult to manage, as you can expect. So we do recommend, if you do use it, just have it relatively concise, to like the maximum amount of locations that are really needed. So Good job, everybody, on that one. So we can move down to question number 2. That again, the majority of folks got correct as well. So when justifying a moment on behalf of a participant in the claiming system, coordinators should, and the correct answer is C, check with HR on the paid/unpaid status for the date of the moment. So if your participant won't return to work within that 2-day response window, you should answer the moment as not working. Obviously, PCG nor the department recommend you track down employees who are not working. If they're not working, they're not working. But if you yourself are not able to justify that moment within that 2 days or respond to it, always contact PCG for assistance, and we can walk you through what to do in that specific situation. So again, good job, everybody. Let me just scroll down here. Okay, so question number 3, coordinators will only have access to justify a moment on behalf of a participant during the 2-day response window. And everybody got that one correct. So the correct answer is true. Again, just like I said a couple seconds ago, if you're not able to justify that person's moment within that 2-day window, give PCG a call and we'll walk you through next steps with that as well. So question number 4, again, we're looking good on the answers. Coordinators can update shifts assigned to providers/positions throughout the quarter. So this is false. So just like Andrew said earlier, shifts can only be altered in the next quarter when that staff list is open. As soon as those moments are generated, shifts are locked because, again, those moments are generated, assigned to participants, and are scheduled. So those shifts can't be updated. So always, again, just review your shifts quarterly, make sure everything's up to date, make notes during the quarter if you need to make a change, just so nothing is missed. All right, and then lastly, okay, looks like we had some span of answers yesterday too. So which of the following statements is not true about shifts? And the correct answer is D. Shifts can be edited anytime throughout the quarter. So that, again, kind of piggybacks off the last couple of questions with that. So again, shifts are locked during the quarter. When that staff list is open, means you can make those adjustments to shifts if you need to, but they are locked during the quarter. So any follow-up questions to those 5 questions, or anything that needs to be clarified or anything? All right. I think we can go to just our concluding slide here of just reminders and things to keep in mind that we went through today. But key takeaways, always remember that even though you may complete something that's talked about for like one portion of the program, like RMTS, your staff list, just know that everything is interconnected. Your RMTS drives both the MAC/quarterly as well as the cost settlement reimbursement. So that statewide average of that RMTS percentage does get applied to the annual side of the program as well. Same thing that I spoke about with your staff pull list earlier, that is the backbone to your cost reports. If someone's not on your staff pull list, they won't show up on your cost report. If someone's accidentally put on the admin staff pull list when they should be direct service, they're not going to show up on your annual cost report. So very important, kind of, again, keep everything accurate, up to date, because it will snowball into the other parts of the program. Locations we talked about, not mandatory. It's just a district specific decision of whether we want to use them or not. I would just, again, we recommend just having an adequate amount of locations, not going overboard, and having it be more of a burden than helping out. Shifts, just like I said earlier, Always review them quarterly, make notes during the quarter if you need to make an adjustment. If you have a new contractor that will have to have a very unique and specific shift, always recommend keeping those notes on hand. Again, so when that SAP list opens up and that new quarter becomes available, you can adjust your shifts. And then unassigned shifts should be inactivated or removed, because that will cause a little bit of issues as well. Moment justification, as coordinators, you should strive to justify moments for participants on leave or end them when appropriate. So again, check with HR, make sure whether it was unpaid or paid, and also whether that person is still there working at the district. Because again, if they're not, you should end them, put an end date for them so they stop receiving moments. And then comprehensive reviews. So they are, we know we ask for a ton of documentation, which is just a requirement of the program to ensure cost reports are accurate and districts are maintaining compliance, but they also serve as a tool for BOCES or districts to identify gaps in knowledge or areas that they may not always work in, but they learned a little bit. So if you mainly deal with finance, you may learn a little bit about IEPs, attendance records, service logs, that portion, the billing portion of it. But we have heard each and every year that it's really it is kind of a knowledge dump because we're asking so much, for so much documentation, and it's really talking with districts of what we're seeing, findings, best practices, things like that. So it is a good learning process for new folks in the program. Also helps to, I think probably the biggest thing I've heard this year is it's definitely helped identify internal processes that need to be tweaked or added to not only make this process easier, but also to kind of, again, help push compliance and make things easier internally on folks. So again, it's a good learning process. It's not all about just getting it done as quickly as possible, but definitely what we've heard is it's been a good learning process. All right, I think we can go to just our last two wrap-up slides. So as always, we just want to note all the various resources that are available to districts and BOCES, not only on the PhD claiming system, but also on the department's website as well. So you have your SAP list decision tree. That's probably the main one I would point out just based off what we talked about today. Program calendar that will be updated in the next few months for the FY23 year that is upcoming. So that contains all the due dates for the upcoming year. It'll just, again, be a few months before we update it for the upcoming year as well. And then also that free care documentation's also always up there as well. And then last slide is just a contacts page, has all our emails, phone numbers for the department, CDE, and PCG as well. So have all the various emails and phone numbers in case you all have any questions. If you have any issues, again, with your moments or with that 2-day response window, always reach out to PCG as soon as possible and we can help you out with that. But that is pretty much all we had for this training. So we'll stick on the line for 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes or so, just to see if there are any last questions. And if you do, feel free to pop them in chat or come off mute is fine as well. But if not, we hope that you all have a great day, and thank you again for attending today's training.